Now, for over the last 2 years, before the start of every NFL season, I always ask myself, JT, is this finally the year that the Buffalo Bills get over the hump and make it to the Super Bowl? And last year they went 11-6. They lost to the Chiefs due to a coin toss, which allowed Kansas City to get the ball for the first possession of overtime. And we already saw how that turned out. But for the Bills this year, entering the 2022 NFL season, this not only is one of the most talented teams in the AFC conference, but they're one of the most talented teams in the whole entire NFL. Josh Allen last year, to me, was the second best quarterback in the NFL behind Aaron Rodgers. Look at what he did, not only throwing the football through the air, but also what he meant for the Buffalo Bills offense in the ground game. And you still have Stephon Diggs at wide receiver, one of the top 5 receivers in the game at the moment. Gabriel Davis went off in the playoffs for the Bills, and many people, myself included, think that he could be in for a breakout season. But the reason why I'm so excited for the Buffalo Bills this year is because you add Von Miller on the defensive side of the football. And if Gregory Rousseau ends up breaking out this season, because he had a really phenomenal rookie season, as a matter of fact, Gregory Rousseau probably exceeded everybody's expectations for how he was going to perform in his first year in the NFL. Because when he was coming out of Miami, the narrative about Gregory Rousseau was that he had a lot of potential when you look at his physical attributes and his athletic attributes as well, but he wasn't that polished. Well, we started hearing a lot of reports that Gregory Rousseau was having a really good training camp. He had a pretty good preseason as well, and that carried over into the regular season. And Gregory Rousseau made some really key plays for the Buffalo Bills during certain moments of 2021. So I'm really excited to see what he does going into year 2 alongside of Von Miller. You also have the fact that Ed Oliver also is starting to come around as well. Your linebackers, Matt Milano, Tremaine Edmonds, are still really good. And in the secondary, even though you lost Levi Wallace in free agency, you're going to be replacing him with rookie cornerback Kaiir Elam, who I was also really high on as well. So you pretty much could have 2 number 1 corners. You have Tre'Davious White on one end, and then you have Kaiir Elam on the other end. So my best case scenario for the Buffalo Bills this year is 14-3. And the reason why I have them so high when it comes to their ceiling is because, honestly, when you look at their schedule, they have some really tough games in here, but they also have some pretty easy, winnable games that they should be able to win. But no matter who they play, the Buffalo Bills are going to be favorites in the majority of their matchups, because this team is absolutely loaded on both sides of the football. So it's only right for them to have, one of, if not the best record in the NFL. So the ceiling, I have them at 14-3. The floor is 10-7. And the reason why I have the floor at 10 wins, I know Buffalo fans are probably going to say, JT, the floor should at least be 11. Well, I think that Buffalo could end up falling victim to looking ahead into the playoffs, and maybe they just coast their way through the regular season, and then when the playoffs comes around, they end up elevating their level of play. But the worst case for 10-7 is that, let's say Miami actually is really good. They still do have a really talented roster on paper. Their defense also is pretty stacked. Their offense should improve this year with Mike McDaniel at the helm, at head coach. You bring in Tyreek Hill, you pair him up with Jalen Waddle. Tua should take that next step in his development. So Miami potentially could take a game from you. New England is more than capable of being able to take a game away from you. And New England made a lot of underrated moves this offseason. Not major moves that many people are going to be paying attention to, but they have been chess moves that's going to allow the New England Patriots to have way more speed on the field when they play the Bills this year. So I think that you could end up splitting with both the Dolphins and the Patriots this year. And on top of that, the run game for Buffalo definitely still has to be a huge question. Look at Devin Singletary. I don't think he's a bad running back. I think he's pretty solid. But the reason why, I'm not really all that high on Devin Singletary is because he's not all that consistent. Sometimes he'll have some really good performances, and most times he'll end up just being subpar. Now, you brought in James Cook, who is more going to be a factor in the passing game for you, pretty much another Alvin Kamara, Austin Eckler kind of running back. So I don't really know how big of an impact that he's going to have in the run game for Buffalo this year. So I still think that the Bills are going to still rely heavily on Josh Allen's legs to have a sufficient ground game this year. And then on top of that, the pass rush. Let's say maybe Gregory Rousseau doesn't take that next step in development and he still is the same player that he was last year. That could be a major disappointment. Maybe Father Time finally catches up with Von Miller. But I do think 10-7 is the floor for the Buffalo Bills. My overall record prediction for this team for this season is 12-5. Now, their schedule to start the season off is really, really tough. I mean, you play the Rams Thursday night, Tennessee, on the road against Miami, on the road against Baltimore, back-to-back road trips. Then you have to play Pittsburgh at home. Then you got to go on the road to play Kansas City. I mean, this is a really tough schedule to open up the year. Then off your bye week, you play the Green Bay Packers. So you're pretty much playing 5 or 6 potential playoff teams for this year. And some of those teams, the majority of them, Tennessee, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, and Green Bay, all 5 of those teams were playoff teams in 2021. And then, you get a little bit of a break in your schedule after that Green Bay game. You get to play the New York Jets, the Vikings, the Cleveland Browns. Deshaun Watson should be back by that time. Then you play the Lions on the road, and you have New England, New York, Miami, Chicago, and then you close off your last 2 games of the year against Cincinnati on the road on a Monday night and New England at home. So their first couple of games, or the first half of the season for Buffalo, is going to be incredibly gruesome. And I think that there are going to be some games that they are going to end up losing. Even they could maybe end up suffering an upset. But anytime you're having these back-to-back consecutive road games, going against Miami and Baltimore on the road, that's really tough. And then 3 out of 4 of those games during that stretch are going to be on the road. And the only home game that you have during, your first couple of matchups are really going to be against Tennessee and Pittsburgh. So that's a really tough stretch for the Buffalo Bills that they're going to have for the first duration of the season. So I definitely think that, with all of these teams being really good, that there are going to be a good potential of Buffalo taking some bumps in the road really early on. That Rams game could go either way, but Buffalo also could win all of these games because they're just that talented. But 12-5 is my record prediction for the Buffalo Bills. I think this probably could be good enough for them to get the number 1 overall seed in the AFC. I'm not going to confirm that because we still have a long way to go in these predictions. But I think that Buffalo is not only going to be one of the best teams in this conference, but I think that they're going to be one of the best teams in the NFL this year. And I definitely expect them to be in the AFC Conference Championship game this year.